Let's start our session. Hello, everybody. Our session dedicated to the thinking about or rethinking maybe of the Holy and Great Council of the Orthodox Church, which was, of course, an important milestone in the life of the Orthodox Church. The process of its preparation took almost a century, and the main aims of the council were to show the visible pan-Orthodox unity and to propose solutions to the actual problems facing the Church in modernity. Evaluation of the results achieved by the council, its role and place in the world of Orthodoxy should now be the subject of our theological analysis. The purpose of this session is to consider the Council and its documents from different sides as an event, process, and challenge for the Orthodox Church. The first report will be mine, and I would like to introduce myself. My name is Andrey Shishkov. I am secretary of the Synodal Biblical and Theological Commission of the Russian Orthodox Church, and I was involved, for example, in in preparation such documents as a document on primacy of the Moscow Patriarchate, and my presentation names the Republic of Autocephalous churches towards a new model of the Orthodox Church. No doubts that the Holy and Great Council that took place in Crete in June of 2016 became a significant phenomenon in the life of the Orthodox Church, as I said before. At the same time, it demonstrated that unity in the decision-making of the general character is still unattainable. The absence of the desired unity cost the Council of Crete of pan-Orthodox status. I'm sorry, but it is a fact. Many commentators and analysts hasten to write off this for political intrigues. But the reasons for the failure of this pan-Orthodox unity rooted much deeper, I think, in the features of contemporary Orthodox ecclesiology. The breeding ground for such a crisis is provided by the very form of organization in the Orthodox Church, which took shape in the 19th and 10th centuries. In Orthodoxy, the General Council is traditionally considered the highest body of church authority. The last General Council of the Orthodox Church was held in 787 more than 1,000 years ago. All subsequent councils didn't have such a high status. The idea of convening after a long break the new general, ecumenical or pan-Orthodox council appeared at the end of the 19th century. The first active attempts to convene it belong to the 1920s and 30s, and the official preparation of the council began in 1961. The council was supposed to become a symbol of the unity of the Orthodox Church and prepare solutions for actual issues faced Orthodoxy in the modern era. The Council of Crete of 2016 was supposed to be the culmination of a preparatory process that spanned several decades. The representation of all 14 recognized autocephalous churches should have ensured the Council the status of pan-Orthodox. However, just a few weeks before the opening of the Council, several churches announced their refusal to participate in it and at the dates appointed earlier, and asked for its postponement. The host of the council, the Church of Constantinople, did not agree to this, and as a result, the council passed without the participation of 4 churches. which in response refused to ratify the documents prepared by the Council. Thus, the Council of Crete lost its general status. I would like to point out some reasons for the existing failure to achieve unity and to suggest a possible way to overcome this problem. The first reason is a different vision by the main actors of the preconciliar process of the ecclesial structure of the Orthodox Church. The key topic for understanding the ecclesial structure is the question of the supreme or sovereign power in the Church. This issue has a direct bearing on the Pan-Orthodox Council. On the one hand, the Council itself is conceived as the highest authority instance. On the other, several themes of the preconciliar agenda were somehow related to this issue in its particular aspects. These are three topics from the preconciliar catalogue of Chambézy: the Orthodox diaspora, autocephaly and its manner of proclamation, and diptychs. An analysis of the attempts to solve these topics within the framework of the preconciliar process makes it possible to see how its various actors understand a church structure. To these topics, the question of the primacy in church will be added, of course. It should be noted that these three topics, the topic of diaspora, autocephaly, and the diptychs, haven't received its final solution in the framework of preconciliar discussions. All of them remain controversial, including the topic of the Orthodox diaspora, on which also an agreed document was prepared, but its analysis shows that the very problem is not being solved. The solutions proposed by the participants of the above-mentioned debates make it possible to single out two main approaches to the issue of supreme power in the Church. Schematically, the two models under discussion can be represented in the form of a paraphrase of the principle of relations existing in the Church tradition between the primate and the other bishops, which sounds like the first among equals. In the first model, this principle should sound like first without equals. In the second model, equals without the first. According to the model 1, first without equals, there is a supreme authority in the Orthodox Church localized in the Ecumenical Patriarch, who is the first among equals in the sacred diptychs. Within this model, while the Ecumenical Patriarch as sovereign does not extend his administrative power to other autocephalous churches, he still can interfere in their internal affairs as supreme arbiter. He enjoys the right to consider appeals on the pan-Orthodox scale and to make decisions on them. He has power to grant or remove autocephaly. He appropriates the right to govern the entire Orthodox diaspora. Accordingly, the Ecumenical Patriarch can unilaterally accept the dioceses and parishes in the diaspora into his jurisdiction. This approach also provides for the Ecumenical Patriarch the right to convene pan-Orthodox conferences, conferences of heads and representatives of autocephalous churches, and finally a pan-Orthodox council, and to preside over all these assemblies. As a chairman, he is the voice of all Orthodox assemblies which he heads, and a symbol of the unity of the Church. In other words, the Ecumenical Patriarch occupies a unique place in the system of church administration and has additional power functions as compared to other primates. This makes him the only sovereign in the Orthodox Church. The model 2, equals without the first, is based on the idea of equality of all autocephalous churches. According to this approach, each autocephalous church has the right to create and govern its own church structures, parishes or dioceses in the diaspora. Each autocephalous mother church decided whether to grant autocephaly to its part or not. No one should interfere in the internal affairs of the Autocephalous Church, all the more unilaterally. The question of convening a general council is prioritized in different way. It is not important who convenes the council, but all autocephalous churches should give their consent to its convocation and thereby empower the convener of the council with the appropriate authority. We can assume that these models, which were negatively labeled as neopapalism and absolute autocephalism back in the late of 1940s, were not designed for inter-Orthodox cooperation because they do not anticipate such an experience. It is difficult to suspect the idea of hegemony of ecumenical patriarch or isolationism of autocephalous in a prosperity for cooperation. Perhaps the inability of or unwillingness to move away from predetermined models led to the fact that during the pan-Orthodox preconciliar process, stretching for 55 years, it was not possible to resolve controversial ecclesiological issues. The second reason can be found in a specific understanding of the legal order or at the pan-Orthodox level, which can be described in terms of decisionistic theory of sovereignty created in 18th century by such philosophers like Louis de Banal, Jean Bodin, and then developed in the 10th century by Carl Schmitt. The meaning of decisionism lies in the fact that any norms, any laws, and their interpretation, any legal order, find their essential basis in the decision of the sovereign. For example, Schmitt says that a genuine, pure solution cannot be derived either from the content of the preceding norm or from an already existing order. A sovereign decision is an absolute beginning in a beginning, also in the sense of arche, Greek term, is nothing more than a sovereign decision, he writes. A sovereign decision arises from normative nothingness and concrete disorder. This legal system can be described with the help of the terms sovereign decision and state of emergency or exception. In my view, the Schmittian approach to sovereign power is relevant for the analysis of contemporary specific ruling mechanisms in the church at the pan-Orthodox level. Its tool can be successfully applied to the concept of autocephaly and primacy. In the 19th and 10th centuries, the concept of autocephaly was rethought in connection with the formation of new autocephalous churches on the territories of the former Ottoman and Russian empires. And this new understanding of autocephaly is identical to the concept of sovereignty in international relations. Sovereignty in this case belongs to the autocephalous church and is exercised within its borders. Another feature of the modern structure of the Orthodox Church is the lack of legal relations, analogy of international law, between autocephalous churches. The interaction of the churches at the pan-Orthodox level without any law system can be described as a competition of sovereigns. This approach corresponds to the model equal without first. On the other hand, from the point of view of the second model, first without equals, the supreme power coincides with the primacy and belongs to the ecumenical patriarch. He is constantly introducing the state of emergency and reformating the legal order. The proclamation or abolition of autocephaly, as well as the expansion of the territory, canonical one, and in the diaspora, find their solution through the introduction of an exception. In this approach, the ecumenical patriarch creating a new legal order by himself, what we can see, for example, in the Thomas of Autocephaly of the newly established the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. The main conclusion that can be drawn from decisionistic theory of sovereignty is the following. The achievement of pan-Orthodox unity is possible only under the rule of a single sovereign. The presence of several sovereigns, which are autocephalous churches, does not allow achieving unity. This is what the Council of Crete demonstrated. The main question of Orthodox ecclesiology today is how to combine the aspirations toward unity in the church, general decisions, and the independence of autocephalous churches. The key concept for the idea of independence of autocephaly is freedom, understood as the absence of interference. In political theory, such negative understanding of freedom in terms of Isaiah Berlin underlies political liberalism. For my study, an important conclusion from the debates on negative freedom as non-interference is the assertion that it does not allow positively to describe such values of the political, or in this case, ecclesial community as a unity. The opposite, positive understanding of freedom to be the master of oneself presupposes some sorts of superior individual integrity, but doesn't guarantee non-interference. But there is an alternative that goes beyond the dichotomy of negative and positive freedom. This is the concept of freedom as non-dominance, which was developed in the Republican normative theory, developed by British political philosophers Philip Pettit and Quentin Skinner. This freedom as non-domination means not to be in the will of another. This definition of Russian scholar Oleg Harhodin. It should be said that I proceed from the premise that theologians can turn to social and political theory for the development of ecclesiological theories describing the governing structures of the church. In my case, I turn to the normative theory of republicanism, and I assume that the basic principles of republicanism, such as freedom as non-domination, are universal for organizing the life of various communities, not only for political community, but also for ecclesial community. I hope that my research will serve as a first step towards the formation of some kind of new normative ecclesiological theory based on this principle of freedom as a non-domination. The problem of supreme power in the Republican theory is solved through the delegation of sovereignty to the institution of law, and not to specific actors, sovereigns. The normative theory associated with such a concept of freedom suggests the supreme power is the power of laws, not the power of people. Accordingly, the main task of institutions based on the concept of freedom as non-domination is to protect against arbitrariness. The sovereignty of law creates the possibility of creating a common space, res publica, for the action of all actors included in the community, both individual and collective. In the system of inter-Orthodox relations, observance of these principles means the creation of such pan-Orthodox institutions that would provide protection from arbitrariness in relations between autocephalous churches. And here we're faced with the weakness of contemporary Orthodox ecclesiology. It doesn't imply the existence of institutions that would effectively protect against arbitrariness. Church law does not fulfill such a role for nowadays. It itself often becomes an instrument of arbitrariness when canonical norms are attracted by the church authorities to reinforce decisions already taken at random. And in the space of relations between autocephalous churches, there is no legal regulation at all. Moreover, among the leading Orthodox ecclesiologists of the 20th century who formed the contemporary face of this theological discipline, we can often find disregard for the law. which they consider to be not ecclesiastical but a worldly way of regulating relations, not the power of laws but the power of love. This thesis we can find in works of a lot of Orthodox theologians of 20th century. First of all, this concerns the institution of canon law, which is simply absent today at the pan-Orthodox level. This task implies the creation of a legal code that would regulate the basic principles of inter-Orthodox relations and guarantee the observance of the principle of freedom as non-dominance or protection against arbitrariness of every autocephalous church. The principles of the work of pan-Orthodox institutions, as well as the legal code of the, or maybe the constitution of the Orthodox Church, should be the result of a general decision of all independent autocephalous churches. And since these new principles of interaction affect the interests of not only the collective actors, like autocephalous churches, but also individual ones, both church hierarchs and our ordinary believers, they should go through the stages of public discussion, both in the common space and in professional environments, such as theological schools, theological universities, or theological associations, and regional environments like autocephalous, autonomous churches, dioceses, parishes. In Russian Orthodox Church, since 2009, we have a special body for public discussion of upcoming official documents that have church-wide significance within the framework of our autocephalous church. It calls the interconciliar presence, and this experience can be used in organizing discussions and taking into account the opinions of Orthodox believers. The role of all kinds of professional church associations and unions, both international and regional, is also increasing. I believe that IOTA will become a significant public platform for such discussions. Another issue is a way to establish a new institution. The Council, the traditional Orthodox Ecclesial Institute, should play a role of a constitutional assembly. The format of such a pan-Orthodox council and the principles of representation should be discussed. Should it include the entire episcopate, or it is enough to have delegations from churches, or should the laity participate, etc. A delegation of sovereignty to the institution of law adopted by the common decision of the all main actors will allow combining the aspirations toward unity of the Orthodox Church with the actual independence of church autocephaly. Normative theory based on the principle of freedom as non-dominance requires further elaboration and detailed description. Thank you.